Zach, thank you so much for being on Conscious Conversations. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, so just so you know what we talk about here, it's really different perspectives of healing and wellness, just so people can explore and discern what is best for them. Because, as you know, there's not just one way up the mountain or one answer, despite literally everyone telling us, like, this is the way. So that's my intentions of what this platform is.
That's great. That sounds not filled with guru complexes, and it gives an open space for people to decide and to have choice.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we need in the world right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, I'll let you introduce yourself because, I know your title is spiritual and leadership mentor, and I love that.
yeah,
But as we both know, like these titles, don't always, we can't always reduce it into a few words. They don't really mean shit at the end of the
yeah,
day.
yeah.
So, yeah, so you can tell us, yeah, what you do and
Okay.
what in your own words and like what your training and background is in.
Yeah, so I'll try and give a good synopsis and keep it as short as possible. So I change my title about every year because I don't, how do you encapsulate what you do? And I tend to shift quite a bit. But the foundational structure of what I do is the same. I've been in, like, I would guess you would call it the healing wellness space for over 7 years now. I gave up a full scholarship at a top law school to go into this field and sphere. I've also seen a lot of the problems and issues within it well, and that's what I've used my public platforms to speak on.
Yeah.
I look at everything. So, the shortest way I can give it was that on my journey changed utilizing talk therapy. So, I come from a background of tremendous trauma. Was really just really struggling throughout most of my like childhood and adolescence. And talk therapy was initially the first thing that kind of gave me a lifeline. I had a really beautiful, amazing therapist for years. But at some point, we all recognized that there was like kind of a ceiling on what that could address, especially as a lot of more repressed traumas came up. There's a
Mhm.
spiritual awakening thrown in. And so all of a sudden, it's like, how do you integrate? How do you make sense of these worlds that I don't necessarily have the tools and resources to? So that's what kind of set me on my journey of, and we'll talk about, I've suffered through chronic illness for years. I was better than ill, but put that to the side.
Yeah.
But I work with these different, like you would call them shamanic healers or energy workers or various different spiritual practitioners, like wellness practitioners, like therapists, like all these different fields and people and mentalities and ideologies, kind of learning and trying to basically find where there's holes or where things aren't being addressed by our systems or even the wellness sphere itself. And I've kind of held that space in my career. I function as a trauma healer. I function as someone who is like a guide for others on their spiritual awakening path, but I'm not a fucking guru. I relay some tools and some resources and
Yeah.
we apply them, but always about bringing people to their own internal truth. And along the way, I function as a men's coach. I function as a shadow work coach. I have taken roles on facilitating healing or whatever you want to call it within the context of Palestine, Israel. Like I have served as a leadership mentor in terms of business leaders and CEOs and people on the entrepreneurial level. So 7 years in, have worn a lot of hats and just trying to do my best to be a positive influence on the world, whatever the hell that looks like.
Wow. Yeah. That's where I'm like, whatever your title is, it is, but
Yeah.
always want to hear like what you really feel, encompasses your work. And I mean, I want to dive into like all of those sections, and your story is so interesting. I heard you on Evan Meyer's podcast, which is so funny because you and him are like the two creators this year that I was like, I like fucks with them. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know them, or
We're
like,
pretty similar.
like, yeah. And that's why I
Yeah.
asked you to come on. Most people I personally know. And
Yeah.
so I, wrote to you. It was little to do with, I didn't even really know what you did. It was just
Yeah.
because I came across your content and I immediately was like, this is exactly where I'm at. And it wasn't like in a pedestal way or like this guy has all
Yeah.
the answers way, because I've learned better than
Yeah.
that
That's
from
what that would
doing
be.
that. But yeah, it was more like in a visceral way where I like read the words and you were
Yeah.
articulating like what I've been feeling, and what I've been seeing and what I've been navigating myself. So that was kind of, for anyone listening, like why I just reached out and started like chatting and then asked you to come on. Um, for a long time now, I've felt that the world of alternative healing has so much beauty
Hmm.
and so much cause for concern.
Yep.
And that's, the fabric of why I created a consultancy around this work. It was
Yeah.
like I came into this work and I was like, whoa, who's like in charge here?
Yeah.
There's there's just no certifications. Well, there are, but the regulations, and it was such a gray area that I was like, I quickly understood like where my role was going to be. And of course, it's just my perception of what's safe and what's experienced and all of that.
Yeah.
But that's the role I'm playing. But yeah, I think where we can relate and what at least stood out to me with your journey is having that background where you have actual trauma training. I think that is so rare and needed. And, in a space where people are taking a weekend course and then suddenly becoming like whatever they want as they
Yeah.
are sure well intentioned. It's just, yeah, it's a weird world. And I'm all about like intuition and gifts and tapping into that, but I think we still need real world trained education, like trained educated,
Yeah.
you know people. So I'll definitely die on that hill. And I think what you're doing is so important because we do need people to bridge the worlds from like the law world, the corporate TV
Yeah.
media world, and bridge it with the woo woo, which I think we're both doing in different ways. So, I think people are starving for grounded voices, and you have inspired me to kind of like call out the BS.
Yeah. Good.
Whereas when I was doing that earlier, I felt like I wasn't being in like love and light, and it wasn't like
Yeah.
spiritual.
Yeah.
So that's why wanted to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I saw you and Evan were friends, and I'm like, that's so
Yeah.
funny because it was you two both that I was like, I think I'm gonna bring back my old personality and like call some shit out.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think we both definitely function from that space of like, we're not going to throw out who we are. And that was a big part of my journey was, I'll be fully transparent. Like, something opened up for me 7, 8 years ago. I was atheist my entire life, and then kind of the doors blew off open, and I was exposed to these metaphysical realities. And like I knew that like religion didn't feel like the space for me to explore this, because it's all the hypocrisy. So you get funneled into the new age sphere because you're looking for like a deeper understanding of what this is going on.
Yeah.
And so you're studying shamanic traditions and these things, but you get caught in this web of like it's like the you before the awakening is not real, and like love and light, and this emotion's low vibration, and these,
Yeah.
these real like tickle me Elmo like sayings, like pull a doll, and like these teachers will just say the same shit.
Yeah.
And I was like losing myself. And it was strange because it was like I was holding space for people to have their experiences, and they were getting better because they felt safe to let out these emotions, but something in me wasn't letting that out in myself, or was like there was a subconscious program that's saying I need to shut down from this. And it's like it was like I threw out my whole personhood, and not that like I didn't have things that were highly connected to trauma and like coping mechanisms and adaptive strategies that needed to be slowly shed, but it
Yeah.
was like this underlying like programming of like that you saw in the sphere of like this is not the real you, and this is me now, the love and light, whatever. And I was
Yeah.
like feeling so numb and so empty. I was like, this isn't fucking right.
Yeah.
And the foul mouthed like kid like from outside Philadelphia, right, who was always talking shit, who struggled with addiction,
Yeah.
like this is still me.
Yeah.
And that I think that is like a foundational like attitude or ethos that exists in my work.
Yeah.
Like we're not throwing you out because you have these recognitions or realizations, or like you have potentially expanding consciousness. The rest of you still exists. It's just an expansion that still holds.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's been a lot of my journey with this.
Yeah. No, I feel it from you and Evan, and it's definitely inspired me, and I'm glad to get back to the like New Jersey girl
Yeah,
that like wasn't afraid.
can't throw that out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jersey, Philly, New York, we're all the same.
Yeah,
But okay, so I want to start, you know, I mean, so many places, but
yeah,
let's start with like why you got into this work when you were on the track of being a law student. Or I guess
yeah.
why you got into this when you were like your goal was to be a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, it's still tough because there are parts of me that still wish I did law. In full transparency, 7, 8 years on this.
Yeah,
Um, I
still
I
can.
what's that?
You still can.
Yeah, I'm not fucking going back. No, no way.
Totally can.
When
Don't
I
worry,
when
I'm
I
doing it.
when I see a couple of my best friends are like my former law school classmates, and when I see the ways that they're struggling, we went, like I said, went to a top legal institution, that they're struggling, or the sphere or that like mechanism is working in their own lives, especially the corporate law part. It becomes very clear to me of why something shifted me out.
Yeah.
Um, I, to be honest, like it wasn't a fully like, oh, I've had an awakening and now the law doesn't, it really was. I went to law school. I had uncovered a lot of trauma, and I had cut off my family at the time right before the semester had started. And so I for the first time in my life, I was really being open and honest about what my experience was. I wasn't hiding anymore, you know. And so I went to Washington University in St. Louis on a full scholarship, and I was there, and I was sharing to this, like, one of the administrators, like, my situation, and I was received really poorly. Like, I was really talked down to in a way, like, of that, like, my background and what I was holding wouldn't function well in that system. And I would continually try to let these people know, like, I've gotten here with 10% of the resources everyone else. Like, and so you have to trust that I know how to function within my system, and I'll do well. And I didn't see that, you know? And so it became a point of,
Were you hoping that they would let you share, or what was your goal in sharing with them?
I wanted them to like leave me the fuck alone. Okay, so here's the thing, whatever. It was like I started like suffering a little bit from panic attacks. I let
Yeah.
them know. I said, "Hey, I might not be able to attend like every class, but like I'm really good at self-studying. Like this is what's going on in the background of me." And it became this whole mentality of, well, some after sharing my trauma, someone of your background won't excel at a school of this prestige. I'm paraphrasing, but this was really realistically what was relayed to me. And I'm not an isolated student in this case. Like this was an institution that wants you to operate in a certain way. And so I was told that I was going to fail classes and all this stuff, and um, I ended up doing well. But I got to that point where I could really see that like there was no empathy, no understanding. And I was even relating to a professor one time. I was like, you know, what I've been through is going to make me really good at my job. I was at law school to be a child advocacy lawyer. So I was like, this is what's going to allow me to be a job. Like if I have like, and panic attacks weren't even necessarily a symptom I dealt with in my life. It was cutting off family. You're going through something. You're going through a natural physiological response. Just let me deal with it, you know? And this whole notion that anything that doesn't have you operating like a machine
Yeah.
is bad, wrong, and severed. I remember I told a professor, like, you got to give me space. I will be like, I know what I'm doing. And this whole response of like, well, maybe this because of the panic attacks, like this sphere isn't for you. And I was like, but you know what? Then maybe it fucking isn't. Um, and so I did well in my exams, and I sent my associate dean a letter, and I was like, because of the way you've treated me, like I don't want your name to ever be associated with what I'm going to do in the future. I was very firm. That was like my boundary of like, I know, like you told me I wasn't going to do well. I did, but goodbye.
Wow.
And I'll find another way. I don't necessarily need this degree to do what I want to do in the life and create the change in the systems and the change in the life of others.
Wow.
And you know, I got a response back of like, we love to have you. Once they saw I did well, we love to like once they saw that I could function the way I told them I can still function. They were, you know, kind of like, well, let's have you back. And I was like, no. And that's okay. So for me, it was like I saw that the process that I was going to have to go through to reconcile my trauma, to like grow and expand, that was not held. There was going to be no space for that in that institutional system, you
It's
know?
it's
Yeah.
pretty young that I'm just thinking of me in college, like just like so unaware of the traumas that were like
Yeah.
it's pretty wild that you were like you already knew what you needed to do to navigate those traumas. Like, can you share a little bit more on that? Like, was it something that somebody told you it's going to be a long road, or were you already like really resourced well in that
Yeah. I
category?
mean, so like I had been in talk therapy for like several years at that point. And that's what took me from being like basically a high school dropout to someone who's like applying to Harvard, Yale Law, you know? And I'd even, we sometimes me and the therapist would joke. I would see how they were working with me, even on a parts work level, and I'm learning. Like even in that space, like as these are being applied, you're learning how to work with it, and you're relaying your internal terrain and environment, and they're giving suggestions and how to interact with yourself. And at some point, you are just naturally picking up the skill set. It's not just about studying it in a school; it's about applied learning. So I went through several years of that journey. Part of my education background, even I think I minored in psychology, but I work with like a PhD psychologist. Like I had a professor who really took a liking to me, and we would go and work on these levels. I'd share theories and stuff with them, and so I had been like at least studying in my own way on this level for quite some time, so that when trauma came up to this level, there was some exposure to like what I needed to do, but I also needed to learn a lot more. And that's what, when I left law school, that's what I did, was learning a lot more about the nervous system, internal family systems, and even the nature of like the energetic body, and these things, because like I knew that's what I was going to need to heal and piece my psyche together, as well as integrate like the expansions and openings that had happened on a spiritual level. I went from having nothing, I'll be fully transparent, I went to having nothing to having like the clairvoyance, the clairaudience, the clairsentience, like opening up. And that became, it's like, I spent several months when that happened, even before law school, like studying, figuring out what the fuck do I do with this?
Yeah.
So it was a lot all at the same time.
Yeah, you're so lucky that, and well, not lucky in all the ways, but I'm saying like in the sense of like some people, when they're having those spiritual gifts happen, they think that
Yeah.
they're going crazy and like check themselves into like an institution. It sounds like you were like kind of aware that there was like something spiritual trying to come through and like just researching as much as you could.
Well, I mean, like the first thing I did was I Googled how, God, this is gonna probably ruin my political career in the future. I Googled how whatever. We'll get a chance. I Googled how do you know spirits are talking to you or you're schizophrenic? Like that was the very first thing like I
Oh,
Googled. I went to like my therapist I went to my therapist at the time and even relayed to them. I was like, diagnose me with something, and they were like, they were even the ones that relay like, I feel like you're having like a spiritual like experience, because I was full of so much rage, and suddenly like my heart was really starting to soften, and I was making choices actually from a little bit more of like a integrated space,
yeah.
even during the something of that level. um
Were you,
yeah.
was your trauma something that you were aware of your whole life, or you remembered it later, like in college?
Oh, I remember it late. I remember it later in college. I mean, I knew that like I came from like a narcissistic like it had been a whole build up. Like I knew I came from like a narcissistic family system. I had to learn and grieve over what that meant. But then like later on, like the whole smorgasbord of like child sexual abuse and that stuff just kind of flung to the surface. And so it was
And
repressed.
you hadn't remembered that.
No, not until it was spontaneous. It opened, and then but it kept opening like a floodgate. Because I also built a lot of good resources around me. I was actually going to undergrad in New York at the time. I had tons of like friends and loved ones and things like that. So I was well resourced, that like something in the subconscious was like, okay, we can let this up now.
Wow. When, because you work with trauma, how does that, do you have any understanding of why that happens to certain people at certain points in their life?
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand that the body, if the body goes through a traumatic experience that it can't reconcile, like it just it can't make sense of it, it can't understand it, the system goes offline. Like it
Hmm.
is literally such a severe disassociative state. Like even like the neural networks connect to the event, like deaden, basically. Okay, like I'm using language. I trust the language I'm using can be interpreted enough as being accurate. And so like yeah, it's like the visual storage center of the brain can go offline. The body like goes, contracts, and holds the memory somatically in spaces that it can't necessarily be accessed, right? Or like fully understood. Like your body will be contracted, but it won't be understanding what's happening. Um, and so yeah, the system does not connect to the experience and pushes it away. Okay, because the system's always trying to survive.
Yeah.
All right, like the brain and the body and the nervous system are actually smart. If they know that this is not something that I can make sense of, like it will shut down from the experience. Now, at some point, what ends up happening is if the body and brain typically feel safe enough that like, oh, we're old enough, mature enough, like we have the right support systems around us or whatever, the system goes, we can let this out now, you know? Um, and especially for me as someone who suffered a lot with chronic illness and stuff, like something had to give at a certain point. Like holding this memory and being detached from this on a somatic subconscious level was creating illness. And so yeah,
Yeah.
this pulsed it up, and but it was a smorgasbord. I it was like a life or death type thing of learning how to process and integrate the experiences appropriately. And I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't a lot, but there was kind of my trial by fire, so to speak.
So you are in college at this point. You leave because you're like, these people are, I mean, they're not seeing me, they're not hearing me.
Yeah,
You start your spiritual awakening starts happening, your gifts start coming online. You realize there's a long road to process trauma.
yeah.
Where do you go from there, and how do you get to being a person in service?
Yeah, I mean, this career happened by accident, so it's so funny because like my career is like the inverse of what a typical career coaching career of like I want to be a coach and I signed up like that. That never happened for me. I left law school, and initially my plan was to be a writer. Like I was going to go off and be a writer. I was teaching college classes at the time to make some money in analytical logical reasoning. I was working with spiritual practitioners just to understand how to harness and work with what was coming up, but it wasn't necessarily from a level of this is what I'm going to do.
Right. And this was
I
before you got sick, right?
No, this is after I got sick. So this is after
Oh,
all
we
the
need to
illness
go
stuff.
into that.
Yeah,
We can't
yeah.
skip that. I,
Yeah, I'll
I,
go back to
as this,
that. Yeah, no, so we'll go back to that, but no, so I was working with these practitioners. I kind of had an inkling of maybe something was happening where I was going to do this work, but I didn't know at that time. Um, and then I got hired at a wellness center off the street. Like I walked by a wellness center, and like there's literally a lady at the front who waved me in, and she was like, what are you interested in? And I was like, I got like a Reiki 1 certification. I don't fucking know. Like, and she was like, do you want to work here? We need a male practitioner. I'm like, this is so fucked up, but whatever. And so I got hired at this wellness center, were not credentialed or trained nearly enough to be doing anything. But like, I've been doing meditation and would lead mindfulness meditations and work around that, just very simple. But people would then ask if they could come into me for like one-on-one sessions, and they'd come in. They would come in wanting their trauma to be worked with. I would go and try to refer them out to therapists. They'd come back and they say, we don't like the therapist. You seem like a guy who gets us. That's all we care about.
yeah,
And so then that kind of took me on my own journey of learning and studying and reading trauma heavily. And I work with shamanic practitioners, so working with people on an energetic healing level and figuring out what that world was and what worked and what didn't.
yeah,
And so for the first 2.5 years, I went from having zero clients to then having a fully booked in-person healing practice in St. Louis, and was kind of functioning as this like makeshift counselor before jumping online, and then turned into even something different. So
mm,
yeah, this was something that just kind of happened.
yeah,
And it wasn't necessarily something I consciously set out towards, and now I'm
yeah.
here. So hooray for me.
Well, wait, I feel like the most important chunk. So you had 4 years of being bedbound and ill. Where does
Yeah.
that fit into? Because that's I want to like chronologically get there. So
Yeah, so
you're in school when it happens, or before school?
so the chronological order was massive fuck up as a teen, and all that stuff. Then somehow found my like with a 1.8 GPA, found my way to Arizona State for 2 years.
I
Uh,
feel like Arizona State will accept them all.
yeah, they accepted me somehow. So went there, but then I started doing NGO work in Kenya and South Africa during that time. I took some time away from Arizona State. That's when I quote unquote started to like see the world different, do therapy, perceive things. And it was around that time at 21 that I felt really ill.
So in
And
your last year of college.
I was a junior, I believe. Yeah, so I was like basically like towards my last year of college. I was like 3 semesters away.
Wait, I saw that you said somewhere that you got rejected from Birthright, which I've never heard anyone get rejected. And then so you went to Africa. How did you get rejected? Your last name is
Oh fucking
Alexander.
no! I fucking put in the form. Like I was like, I was like, they're like, we can't take you. I'm like, okay. So I was like, I want to do something. So I don't know. I just booked a trip to South Africa and worked with an NGO there. Like, but then I went to like an all Muslim community and was like going to mosque. Like, it was a very different situation. So I got rejected to Israel, and then experienced another side of this experience. So yeah,
Wow. Okay, so you were a junior. So you got sick before law school. Okay, so tell
yeah.
me about Tell me about the illness. 'Cause we talk a lot on the podcast about how illness is
Yeah.
like the found like becomes like an initiation and all that. So tell me a little bit about what you experienced and
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. So I was traveling. I'm not gonna get too much into, but like I started getting really, really sick when I was kind of bouncing around and was losing like 30, 40 pounds within a month or two, like getting really sweaty, like just feeling so much fatigue. And, a roommate that I adored came to me, he's like, you're really sick, like, and you need to figure it out. So I flew back to the States and, was going to the hospitals. And like, I thought at the time, like, I don't even want to bring up. I did have that'll be for another time. But I was so when I was first sick. This is gonna sound like bullshit, but it's true. When I was first sick, um, I was like had this thought because I'm like, oh, this will be a couple week thing. I had this random thought. This is before my awakening or anything. I had this random thought that you're gonna be ill for years, and this is gonna be really tough, and you're gonna have to move to New York to get well, and then you're gonna become a teacher. And at that time, I'm thinking like, oh, teacher, like a school teacher. Like I didn't think fucking spiritual teacher. And so I basically I went back, and so when I went to the hospitals initially, the first thing they thought it was HIV because I lost so much weight and stuff. So we're kind of waiting on that, and then that came up negative. Then they thought like cancer. We're looking at Hodgkin's lymphoma and things of that nature, right? And that could have been progressed like stage 3, stage 4. That was negative. We looked up Crohn's disease, negative, everything negative, 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 until the point where they were just like, your body is dying. Like we do see that, but we don't know what to do. Here's antidepressants. And that was like my first, like, as someone who always thought the systems would work for you and the doctors would help you, that was my first like catalyst of like, what the fuck am I going to do? You know? And that's what kind of sent me to alternative medicine. But I would literally like study these medical journals and these naturopaths like on my own time, like having to solve my illness. Like I was like, it's just like a fucking Doctor Who thing. And so, I was bedridden ill. Like I could not get out of bed. I legitimately, the fatigue and the stomach pain was so severe. It felt like my senses were like overloaded, like lights and sound became way, way too much. And I was losing organs. I developed type 1 diabetes during that time. My gallbladder stopped working, chronic kidney stones. My intestinal tract could not deliver nutrients. I kept losing weight. And so it was death. And different alternative doctors diagnosed me with Lyme disease. I was treating things on that level for some time, but I wasn't getting much benefit or work from that. I was like blasting my system with antibiotics at times, and that didn't feel good. And I was just kind of wasting away. And so essentially what ended up happening was I did end up moving to New York with a girlfriend at the time who I met. Don't even get me started. I ended up in New York somehow, which was really weird. And so I ended up in New York.
It's been such an expense to deal with all of this. Like,
So I had a grandparent who passed away like the day I came back home from an illness with the illness, and that was just enough to kind of hold this financially for that time.
thank
Okay.
God.
Yeah, well, thank God. Going to get me started on that. Like, it just, yeah. So it's family trauma gets reconciled in some fun ways. So this was all going on, and so that was obviously an expense. And I had seen this alternative medicine doctor in New York. He was an MD who also was a naturopath. Okay, so he was you're a regular like medical doctor, but was exploring alternative medicine. And he came to me and he's like, I want to energetically test your blood. And I was like, what the fuck is that? What does that even mean? And he was like, I'm gonna test your blood with a tuning fork, and like it's gonna tell me what's wrong with you. And I'm just like, this sounds like I'm not open enough yet to this stuff. So I'm like, this is
Yeah.
insane. What do you think? He's like, you have nothing to lose, kid. Like just give it a shot. So I did it, and he said like, you still have an illness from Africa,
So you got it
and
when you were out there.
yeah, and he was like, the medical system's missed it. Is this true? He's like, there's a Nigerian infectious disease doctor who comes to New York a couple weeks of the year. Like, you should go to him. And I was like, da, 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 da. And he's like, just go. And so I did. This guy came to New York, and I went to his apartment. That's literally where he's working out of. I got to this guy's apartment in Washington Heights. There was just like a fold out table and a microscope there. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Deathly ill, like on my deathbed essentially. And the guy tells me, he's like, I actually used to work for the CDC. He's like, I only come to New York a couple weeks of the year because I know where the American medical system is missing things, and I have to plug this hole. So I gave him a stool sample and came back to me and said, you have the second most deadly infectious disease in the world behind only malaria. Miracle you're still alive. All the supplements and protocols and dietary stuff, kept me just long enough alive. And he gave me drugs of grounded up African plants with anti-parasitic properties to drink for 2 weeks. And he said, drink this and you'll be fine. And I was like, dude, I've been through every alternative medical doctor bullshit, like, witchcraft stuff. Like, he's like, listen, kid, like, just drink it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I went home and I did. It was disgusting liquid. I felt horrible even while drinking it. There was like definitely like this die-off effect occurring. And I kid you not, it's not bullshit. Like day 15, I woke up and I felt a jolt of energy. And I went around the block. I got up, I went around the block, and I went to a gym, and I just went and I just lifted a weight for the first time in years. And something in me was like, oh my God, this might have worked. Then it did. And so, yeah, so that was my journey with illness, which was fun. And so I'm now 25, and I have had a 4-year absence on my resume. And yeah, I got to figure out what the fuck to do with myself.
That's crazy. And it's like, I feel like the main reason I started this too, and like why I feel so passionate about people having options, is because you never know what's going to work for you. And I think it's so
Yeah.
confusing, like the fact that, I guess you figure it out when you've tried so many things. But I also heard,
It absolutely was. And there's a whole thing, whatever. I studied a few years later, but that in indigenous cultures, like they often understood that if someone was going to become like the village shaman, and not to like misuse that language, but seriously for what that was, that like the
yeah,
village healer, they were going to go through a mysterious illness. And it was going through that mysterious illness that they had to then kind of figure out themselves and solve. That was kind of like its own initiatory path to understanding the self on a multidimensional level, and to tend to others from that space too. And it was almost like a necessary initiatory thing for them. The level of mine was so extreme and so absurd that, like, yes, it was 110% a spiritual initiation. Was not open to spirituality though at that point of my life. Even after that happened, I even had a doctor or I think it was a nurse who came to me and was like, do you believe in God or something? And I was like, no, this is all coincidence. Like, I was still just so logic based that I still wasn't even open on that level. It wasn't until the awakening happened, like 2.5 years after that, that things blew up, and I kind of understood, like, oh, like the illness was some weird type of deep initiation,
mhm,
that exposed me to so many different levels and layers of things. So
yeah.
yeah, not fun, but I do hold that belief as well.
But yeah, it's interesting. I that you bring up that the shamans kind of discern who is going to be like carrying the torch based on that, because I do hear a lot of stories about how that becomes their awakening. What do you feel like was the biggest teaching for you during that time? Because you said you weren't even like spiritually awakened, but like if you think about what you learned from that time period, what do you think it was meant for?
I mean, I died. I died over and over again. I mean, there's no way that I couldn't do the things that I've done the last 7 years, especially in regards to my career and the ways I've chosen to show up and the leaps I've taken without going through that illness. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, like there was such a deep trust and faith and surrender into a process continuously that have developed, that like things that kind of look crazy to the outside world, like leaving behind a full scholarship at a top law school to go be a fucking Reiki healer. Like I'm not doing that without a 4-year illness. There's no way. Like there's no way of trusting and surrendering into a path. Um, it it makes you learn the body and the self on such a deep, complex level too. It brings you into awareness of where systems and institutions let us down. It brings you into
Yeah.
awareness of where medical and mental health systems let us down, and what they do right as well. I don't want to throw out the bag with
Yeah.
conventional medicine because it
True.
has been helpful at junctures too.
Yeah.
Um, it it built a knowingness. I have to be honest, because like when I bounced out of that illness, even though I wasn't spiritually awakened, when I look back to that time, I went from being a high school dropout basically and an Arizona State shithead to being a 4.0 student and applying to Harvard, Yale Law, and like being like really being looked at as a leader at that time and space before I went into Psychosis from the Awakening. And so like
We'll
which
get
is
there.
nothing.
It's on,
You know,
it's on the list.
yeah. But no, I mean, I was operating from this insane intuition suddenly that was not there before the illness. Like it was wild the way that I was able to trust and maneuver within myself and trust an internal voice that people picked up and it was very felt. Um, and so like, there was definitely something I was called to operate on like a bigger spiritual level from that space. But most people would have been just fine operating from the space I was in. Like I was very intuitive and very like discerning. And so the illness opened that door. Um, because you have to be with pain. You have to be with your own suffering. You have to be with all the thoughts that swirl and this and that, and you have to work with all of this continuously. But it is unfortunately it's training a muscle in you that is needed. I don't like that that's the path for me or that's the path for you as well, right? But it does tend to be the path quite a bit, not always, but chronic illness brings us into layers of self that sometimes we in our modern society would not have had an incentive to interact with.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I'm so deep in that. I went to someone's house here that I trust a couple months ago in Miami. She's a healer, and she just looked at me, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just gonna take antidepressants. I'm like,
Yeah,
I can't be on this path. And she was like, I promise you, like, you will get well. She had stage 4 cancer and healed
yeah,
herself and is now like a healer, but very humble one, very legitimate. And yeah, she said to me, like, I know like it's like
yeah,
feels like you're dying, but like you are going to get out of this and this will be part of your journey. And like she just kind of said in a way that was what you just said is like I know it's
yeah,
brutal, but there is something here for you. And after that, I was like, I knew it. I knew that. And so it's always good. I always love to hear these stories. And I think it's helpful for other people to hear them because, yeah, I don't think people understand what it feels like to be sick every day for years and years. So that makes total sense that you going through that kind of put you on this path to where you're at now, being in service to other people. But I want to talk about the spiritual psychosis. So,
yeah.
when did that happen and what does that mean to you? Like, if you could describe that state.
Yeah, I mean, oh, it's such a tough one. So it's so funny that like I went through that 4 year illness and like I really never felt mentally ill during that time. Like I really felt, I mean, there's definitely layers of depression. Like how the hell could there not be? But like, um, there was a very coherent understanding and awareness of what was going on with me and like and how to interact with others and what my reality was. Like there wasn't like a disconnection or separation from like congruent reality and what my circumstances were, right?
Right.
um and then during like you uncovered, so I uncovered trauma, like really really horrific severe trauma, and working through that, and I think it was about like 5 or 6 months after that I started hearing voices. But like the voices weren't like bad. Like it was like clean your apartment. Like it's being disrespectful to your partner. Like like you like literally simple shit like that. Like stop holding this rage against your parents. Like like really like kind of that's what a psychiatrist wanted to diagnose me or something. Like what the voice is telling you. I'm like to be a better partner. And they're like that's not what they'll say. I'm like I don't know what the fuck to tell you.
Like,
So it was this experience of like I really did feel like it was, and that's not a circumstance situation for me anymore, but it was like this something I was perceiving energy fields. Maybe it was deeper elements of the subconscious. Maybe I had disidentified from fractured parts. Who the fuck knows? But like something, there was a contact or awareness that was deeper. I do remember even telling at the very beginning of like telling people around me, like before there's a full blown awakening, I'm like, I feel like I'm going into like deeper parts of my subconscious that feel strange. Like it's like I'm entering into terrain and territory like that's just I haven't had exposure to, you know? Um, but
And this
like,
is pre-plant medicine.
what's that?
This is pre-plant medicine.
All plant medicine, no plant medicine at all, not facilitated by any type of thing of that nature, right? Like this is happening naturally.
Trauma induced. Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
trauma induced. There's like an explosion of energy. Like it literally feels a fire is ripping through my nervous system. Like people don't understand that the process was so deeply somatic and physiological for me. Like my body was shifting and changing. Like my nervous system was flared. Like it was a lot. And like I'm trying to hold space for what feels like these really deep, raw sensations and feelings and well, you call it Kundalini, whatever the fuck. Like I'm not even provoking it, but something's happening. But like you're stepping into these awarenesses that of like another dimension of experience that you don't have any reference source for. I went to Hebrew school. I had a bar mitzvah, but we're fucking reading Hebrew. They're not even telling us what the words
Yeah.
mean. So like I'm like asking, what does Judaism believe? They're like, I don't know, learn, we're an Aleph Bet Gimel Dalet Hey. I'm like, great, thanks guys. So that's yeah, Brugatadonoi. So like it's like L'chaim L'chaim. So so I'm like I don't have like a reference. I don't have a reference for this shit. And so and then you are having like these deep synchronicities unfold. You are seeing that there are things that you're saying, I feel like this is gonna happen, and it happens in a day or two. And it's not bullshit, it's not delusional. But then the mind, the brain get overloaded with so much new stimulus and so much new awareness, it does not know how to categorize it correctly. And
Yeah.
so you don't know what's a thought or what's an intuition, right?
Yeah.
You don't like, you're not able to you're in this fuzzy area of what's my mind making inappropriate meaning or sense making of something and what's really something coming through. And
Yeah.
so um and then at the same time, when you have some spiritual teachers at the time who are telling you to disconnect from your grief or disconnect from your anger or to disconnect from your sadness because it's low vibe or there's nothing about the now and all this stuff, then you're also like suppressing things that need to come up and you're splitting and fracturing the psyche. And
Yeah.
so you get to the space where like the body and mind are not naturally allowing things that need to come up, and you're also overloading the system with new sensory information and even new intellectual information. I was reading all these esoteric books, like trying to fucking figure out what the hell this was, but I'm overloading like my mental body with too much.
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of lose the ability to connect to congruent, coherent reality. You kind of start living in your quote unquote own reality that's not consistent and might not even be real, you know? And so it is like a little bit of a disconnection from self. The eyes get glazed over. You might not be engaging in self-care the way you should. You're not connected into like consistent, like we do still have a congruent, coherent reality that exists in front of us no matter how much spiritual teachers tell you otherwise, you know?
Yeah.
And there becomes a severing from that, you know, and the mind creates its own perception of things that may or may not even be true or consistent.
Yeah. So true. I feel like earlier in this year, post like an ayahuasca journey, I wasn't sure if I was going through a spiritual psychosis, but it was like it was too much information. Like it
Yeah,
brought me to death and my death, and then I couldn't, the existential like terror and that fear was actually happening every day.
yeah,
And then I was like, oh, repressed trauma's coming up, but it's not. But then I just kept thinking of like what happens when we leave here, and I couldn't like interact with like people, and it was
yeah,
like it really. I will say like I did find your work at that time, and I did end up getting like help with all of
yeah,
that. Because I definitely was having more of like a mental health, physical health and mental
yeah,
health. Like I was just like, I think I'm dying. Like I know
yeah,
that I'm dying. And then I'd go to the ER and they'd be like, you're not. Like, I thank God for doctors actually, because they'd be like, hey, your heart's not stopping. And I'd be like,
yeah,
my heart's stopping. Like it was rough. But what I will say, that time period and like the concern of like, is this psychosis of some kind spiritually, uh definitely did make me understand even deeper the
yeah,
importance of um integration,
Yeah.
proper integration.
Yeah.
And also just that this isn't like a poo-poo platter of like, here, go and try all of like the things in the world. Like it made me hard stop with a
Yeah.
lot of the modalities. And I do think, um, long story short, I know why the medicine was taking me to death and to the seriousness of these things because of the role I'm playing. Like I see it
Yeah.
all. I
Yeah.
see the under weavings.
Yeah.
That kind of brings me into like the next thing, which is basically the whole new age spiritual
Yeah.
world.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I want to be super clear that I believe, and I've heard you talk about this actually on Evan's
Yeah.
podcast. I believe in the modalities and lanes
Yeah.
and all the things listed on my website. I believe in plant medicine. I
Yeah.
believe in energy healing.
Yeah.
I believe in somatic, I believe in functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, homeopath. I believe in it. And um, I think that there's a lot of dangers within that world, just like there's
Mm.
dangers within conventional medicine, right? Um, so yeah, so when I created this, I was like, I want to advocate for people coming into this space. And I
Yeah.
think it took me deeper into that to
Yeah.
understand like, what do you really mean when you say you help people with XYZ?
Yeah.
So then I started living it on a much deeper process. And I was like, fucking it. So what do you feel like? At what point did you feel like the you started seeing the concern of the new age spiritual world, and like what does new age spiritual even mean to you?
I mean, it's kind of funny because my career actually exploded online because I randomly had a flip out one day on the new age sphere. Like I was literally like the sphere's training me to be like I had this moment of just like you're in a vulnerable space in your life. You're trying to make sense of like, what's happening. You start idolizing your teachers to a degree,
Oh, totally.
and that's a mistake. That's not even their fault to a degree. Some of the times it is. And so
Yeah.
you're, how do I want to say this? It's like, you're not even listening to yourself at a certain point and you're just kind of absorbing these
Mm-hmm.
mentalities that are unhealthy. There is a lot of belief systems within New Age ideology that are actually unhealthy to
Mm-hmm.
human physiology and human mental health. Okay. Telling everyone that they can't experience anger or grief or that these are somehow negative emotions versus another, that is unhealthy, right? Like telling people that there's nothing but the now, the past isn't real. Like, yes, from the fucking 10th dimensional level, that's true, but the
Mm-hmm.
past actually lives in our body. And so if you're always saying the past isn't real, you're disconnecting from experiences that live inside your body and your mind that need to process, that need to reconcile. Okay, so there are mentalities within the New Age sphere that are heavily encouraging you to fracture and to disassociate continuously. Like they are actually like creating trauma responses because you are disassociating from your natural internal environment. Okay, it's like you're believing yourself. Okay,
Yeah.
and so I got to this space where it was like I was engaging with these things. I was doing all the things I was being told, and I looked around and like I was first off, I had become a selfish asshole, but like I looked good, but I become a selfish asshole. Like that's on me, right? And I looked and I was like, I'm fucking numb. Like I can't feel anything. What the fuck? And this anger came up, and I'm like, oh my god, I've been repressing all these emotions, and like I'm becoming like a snidely little fuck, like because I'm not letting these raw visceral, like I'm a fucking
You're
dude.
like love and light.
Love and light, but I'm
Yeah.
like I'm a fucking dude from Philly. Like, what the fuck are we all doing here? Like, this isn't me. You're like you're almost these teachers are almost crafting this, and the mentalities of New Age ideology were crafting like this energetically castrated persona for me to like that I needed to like absorb, right, full of crystals and all that shit. And it's like you're severing me from myself, you know. Like not all of me is a trauma response, right? Even if
Yeah.
that is there's resiliency and this still a part of me, and you're having me cut that. And so it really came to a push to shove where I started working with, I think, practitioners or coaches who were much more integrated and would hold space for these emotions and hold space for this. That I really saw like how, and they have been trained under appropriate spiritual mentorship themselves. Like when I describe the things I went under, like, whoa, that sucks, dude. I didn't even have that. And
Yeah.
so I really put together of like, oh my God, like there's something really nefarious happening here, you
Yeah.
know? And then I started working with clients on a level where they're talking about this stuff too. And that's occurring to them. I'm like, okay, like this is
Yeah.
really messed up. And so that's when, like, I think it was like 2 years into this experience where I was just like, no, like this is, guys, this is wrong. Like this is really unhealthy.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, there was definitely an overcorrection for some time into that, but like, because your mind has to now figure out what's real, what's not real, what's helpful, what's unhelpful. But it's what ends up happening is, look, if you, even though I'm Jewish, like if you read Jesus' teachings, there's a lot of like, I believe most of it's right, but like you look at, Christian nationalism and it's like, well, what the fuck is this,
Yeah.
And so same thing with New Age, it's become its own religious dogma where you're
Yeah.
taking teachings, you're reconnecting to teachings and um, medicine that's been lost due to us like colonizing the shit out of like indigenous communities and villages, right? And severing ourselves from their wisdom and recognizing we need that back. But then we are making it into things it was never meant to be, and creating ideologies and beliefs and spiritual hierarchies and all these things, and it becomes its own Vatican Church all over again, filled with nonsense. And so, I mean, I've worked with people coming out of like Christian cults and other type of cults, and I gotta say, it's not that much different from the people who engage with the New Age spiritual thing and kind of get lost in the sauce there. So, yeah, there was just a lot of bullshit to weed through, and because also, and it's just human nature. Anytime we're talking about unseen forces, right, or quote unquote higher knowledge, like that's a level of power to hold. If you're in a position of authority and influence, it's a level of power to hold that if you do not have the requisite training or development or maturation, you will misuse it, even if you're quote unquote a good person, right? And that's just kind of what I've seen a lot in the space.
Yeah. I yeah, I see all of that, and I haven't experienced as much like dogma,
Yeah,
just as I have maybe mm, feeling like confusion in
yeah,
terms of like, which is probably again why I stepped into more of a role of like helping like weed through everything, and why I'm going through it on such a deep level again. But just like confusion as to who's to say what is safe in a ceremony, what kind of
yeah.
experience you need. Like there are people, you know, like saying, well, in this lineage they train like this and they train
Hmm.
like this. Two of them said to me something like, who are you to say? There's a whole thing about it, but yeah, early on I was like, I knew I was like having an intuitive feeling of like something's off, but
Yeah,
it's like, who am I to say? Who are you to say? So I think all of what you said, yes. And also, I think just for people to navigate it, it's like, well, what makes an energy healer qualified? And
yeah,
what makes a medicine woman like a shaman versus, do they need to study in the jungle, or do they need 10 years, or do they need to be the one that gets sick, or can Americans be shamans? Like it's such a like
yeah.
sticky thing. But what do you, when it comes to trauma,
Hmm.
what do you feel like qualifies someone to really walk somebody through sexual abuse or physical abuse, or you know,
Yeah.
like yeah,
I don't know. I felt underprepared and unqualified for when these people came into me, but at the same time, I knew enough to not do harm,
yeah,
and that the systems were so bad that like because I didn't even want to. I kept getting all like these signs and signals that this was something I could hold space for to some degree. Not necessarily to like that I could be alone on an island about it, but that like that was like the best option at that time for some of these people, which is
yeah,
sad. And that's more of a function of the failures of everything. It's like I didn't even necessarily want to be in that role in space. Um, Listen, if you've got to have reconciled things within yourself to some degree, right? Like this has had to be an experience where you're at point A, you uncovered something, like you've had to reconcile your own trauma to some degree. I was not that being in therapy and working through my own stuff for several years qualifies me or is sufficient enough to qualify me in itself, but it is a necessary requirement. I'm going to use my legal stuff here. Like it's a necessary requirement, right? And then I spent a year or two studying the nervous system and studying trauma and reading Peter Levine and Dr. Gabor Mate and
Oh,
yeah, and working on that level. And so it did get to a space at that point where I felt that I was informed enough on a trauma level to guide people into spaces without necessarily like going too deep, and giving them tools and resources and things like that.
what
Um,
about the traditional ways of like, being a trauma informed therapist and things like that? Do you think that they like getting those certifications are worth it?
I if It's dicey because okay, so my ex fiance went to the number two therapy program in the country. Okay. And they came out saying that the education did not prepare them to really hold space or to work with trauma, right? It was more like cognitive and dialectical behavior therapy, working at the level of the mind
Yeah,
and the thoughts, but on a somatic level, like that,
yeah,
that wasn't necessarily in the educations. So like we're at a difficult space because I do think the education and training in these master programs are lacking. Okay.
yeah,
And this is someone now who's trained like lots of therapists and clinicians who are licensed. Like they're coming to me now to be trained, which I think is fucking absurd. But like this is where we're at. Okay,
yeah.
so like they
That's
recognize,
wild.
yeah. I've trained PhD psychologists. I've trained tons of licensed therapists. Like, and they are coming in, and the information I'm giving them is new to them. You know, and so this is why like a lot of therapists do come to me and they're having to do these ancillary trainings to be prepped in their job appropriately, you know um I said in a video years ago, I'm like, there's no way it should be coming from me. I like this is a failure in the systems, okay? But this is where we're at, you know
Yeah.
so um this is why from like even like a legal level, like yeah, the mental health and the wellness field have to start working in conjunction together, and
Yeah.
we've got to figure things out. Like we've got to like parse our like teachings and awarenesses and be like, because we do need in the alternative wellness world, we need ethics committees, we do need regulatory, we need oversight, like 110%. We need some type of regulatory training that can be measured and quantified to some degrees, right?
Yeah.
We're the Wild West right now. So,
Yeah. I mean,
um,
even supplements, like anything can be in them. It's like my boyfriend takes peptides and
yeah,
like checks them in a lab to make sure that they're like what level, like it's
yeah,
insane because you don't know what's in them. But I so agree. I feel like I have so many doctor friends that they're amazing at what they do. They don't like fully understand the connection of like trauma and illness.
yeah,
They'll say stress, but some of them are like getting more curious. But we need them in their expertise as well as acknowledging like the trauma piece,
yeah,
the toxin piece. But then on the flip side, in the alternative medicine world, they definitely need. I hear the doctors when they say like it's the fucking wild west. There's no
yeah,
regulations. I don't trust it. And
yeah,
a lot of chiropractors now are doing functional medicine. Like I completely understand both spectrums. I
yeah,
personally try to bridge the gap, and that's what I'm always like trying to navigate between is like when someone comes to me, it's like, well, why do I think that person is
yeah,
safe and experienced? It's literally like my own perception of it at this
yeah,
point. Um, but yeah, I do hope the world's like kind of bridged together. I feel like we're getting there. But it's yeah, it's so tough because obviously sometimes the certifications and education and regulations are like limiting or like they're
yeah,
not fully like letting you use your intuition and your gifts and all of that. So
yeah,
I like how you say like I don't know the solution sometimes or like I don't fucking know because I feel like lately I've just been like this is what I know.
yeah,
This is what I don't. And I'm always looking at like what certifications should I get to play this role,
yeah,
but at the same time, like not wanting to waste my time if it's not like actually relevant.
yeah.
Um, the new age spiritual space, though, when you started talking out about it on social media, what kind of feedback did you receive? Did you feel like people were like receptive or kind of like what are you talking about?
90% of people applauded me, which I was really shocked by.
Hmm.
I thought I was ending my career, and at that point, like before I even like made those posts and came out the way I did, I still have the pinned video. I still have the video I did pinned on my profile. Um, I I was calling my colleagues. I was like, give me a job as a paralegal. I'm fucking done. I'm out. Like I'm gonna burn this motherfucker, and then I'm gonna hop out of here. And so I was really surprised when I spoke out the way I did because I said like, y'all motherfuckers are turning me into dissociated like zombie guru, and like I hate all of you. No, I wouldn't say it like that, but I was like, I was just like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so I thought like it was going to be this massively negative perception, and the applause. I got massive applause because it was kind of like someone finally said it, and I'm not going to toot my own horn here, whatever. But I don't think this is really coming from an egotistical place. I think I was one of the first people with somewhat of a platform that came out and was speaking to this,
You
and
had a
so
following first, and then you started
yeah,
speaking out.
yeah. I had like at least like I think 20 or 30K across platforms at that point. So like, I mean, I had people following me and was like a respected voice to some degrees. And so it was one of the first times where I think people heard like someone that they had been following as quote unquote a spiritual teacher for some time and then ripped into this thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of came to me like, these are the thoughts you're always having, but no one spoke it and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was actually received incredibly well. And it's interesting because I still work with these modalities. I still work with these
Yeah.
like these things, or whatever. Like I understand what channel. I don't agree with a lot of it, but I understand what the channeling is. I
Yeah.
understand that it's not like these. This is all fake or
Like,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean I've had a couple experiences where I'm like
Yeah.
go sit. I'm
Yeah.
like beep, boop, boop. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Right? I'm not going to post it online, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's happening behind the scenes. So like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I think that's the confusing part. There's
yeah,
certain things that like,
yeah.
here in Miami, it's
Okay.
unreal. But at the same time, there's so much healing and benefits in these tools. I think it's just we've crossed the line. And here in Miami, it's an explosion of performance, right? Like
Yeah,
posting the Kundalini energy and posting like all the,
yeah.
like, but at the same time, I understand it because we want to showcase like what we can do. I think we're just at a weird inflection point where it's like we get to constantly ask ourselves, like, who are we posting this for and what are we
Well,
really doing with this?
you're bringing me up to a good point because it's like this memory hit me, and I actually forgot about this because like my awakening was so spontaneous and had just so dramatically altered the way I related to myself and God and something different. Like it was like it was such a profound experience. But it was also soul dragging and brought me to my knees and like thinking I'm going crazy and stuff and this whole deep shift happening, and this is happening in New York, right, with my fucking buddies who are trying to go on Wall Street. So like, I mean, these are the people I'm around or whatever. And um and so this is the layers that I'm in. Like I'm on my own island. It's basically the point that I'm saying. Like this is an experience happening to me. I have like no reference points.
Yeah.
And then I enter into the new age spaces, and I've got to be honest. Like I was seeing these people and the way they're doing these things, and the way that, and I'm like, I don't think you guys have been through what I went through.
Yeah.
Like I don't. That's like this. It was like, oh, like I did mushrooms one time, and like I liked it, so now I'm here, and it's like, I don't like you don't know what this is, and not to like separate ourselves, but like I was watching them like participate in this thing. I was like, is this what I'm supposed to participate in? Because this seems so different from the experience I just fucking had. And so it was so weird because it felt like whatever the fuck this was. Sorry, this is I have to curse. It became like a fad, and it
Yeah.
like it was just like that's not like. And so what was interesting was I have clients and colleagues who come in who I know, like Evan Meyer is absolutely one of them, which is why it's funny to me. Like I know, like, oh, you've been through this, like
Yeah.
you've this,
No.
but I've been in spaces a lot of times where it's like we're at like a conscious cuddling, and where
Okay.
and I'm like, you're trying to participate in a subculture because you feel lost, but there hasn't been something hasn't necessarily shifted the way it
Yeah.
shifts in this, right?
I, I see it here in Miami all the time. And I've always had, I don't know, I actually have a post that I'm going to post this week where it's like, it's something different. It's about like, I think we should bring back like ride or die friendships, because I
Yeah.
think like in the spiritual world, we got so into like, I need to do what's best for me and conserve my energy. And like, it just became like me, me, me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it's the Jew in me, the Italian in me, the Jersey in me, the Manhattan in me, but I'm like, where the fuck are the ride or die? Like
Yeah.
it's been lost. And it's like, it, I feel like in that space, I see a lot of like, yeah, it's a lot of almost like selfishness, but
Yeah.
masked as, yeah. And it's, you know, even my parents at one point were like, I love what you're doing, but like, you should maybe when you have a kid, you go like, get out of this me, me, me.
Yeah.
I will say, like, to your point, yeah, I started feeling like there were people that got into the work because it was trendy,
Yeah.
and I could feel it in my body. I was
Yeah.
like, I want to work with someone who's been through, you know, my family has serious mental health
Yeah.
issues. My dad's side from the Holocaust, and just a lot of stuff. And I was like really going through it. And I was like, I can't work with someone unless I know they've like really navigated something serious. Because yeah, I just think it became trendy. And then there was all these parties and events here that were like, you know, like ecstatic dance or mushroom ceremonies. And I was just like, there was something in me that was like viscerally not into
Yeah.
it. And I couldn't figure out why. And, you know, my boyfriend's still in finance. Like he's still
Yeah.
very in the matrix. And like he was like, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
And I thought I was just like trying to play, like, you know, bridge the worlds. And I was like, it's not even that. It doesn't resonate for me.
Yeah.
The casualness of plant medicine, psychedelics. I mean, I had it I heard what you said on Evans, like it wasn't fun for you. It was never fun for
Yeah.
me to go drink ayahuasca.
Yeah.
It was visceral. And
Yeah.
I was like, where are people like, but yeah, I mean, I think when you get out of religion, then you kind
Yeah.
of look for community, and it feels really good. Like I reflect on all of the ceremonies and all of
Yeah.
the things that I did. And I started feeling like this is life. This is the
Yeah.
way. This is beauty. Like this is, we're all one. And then it's
Yeah.
like I don't know if it was you or him that said it, which is like, but the rest of the world doesn't live like that.
No.
That
No.
was where I felt like a psychosis of like, how the fuck do I show up like this love and light,
Yeah.
like we're all one, and then, you know,
Well, okay, so I'm laughing because it's like you are. It's so funny as we talk about this stuff, how like certain memories like flash for me that I know, but I kind of forget. Like the beginning of my awakening. But like my awakening, like my heart, I went through all this abuse and trauma, and then I go through this experience. Like literally, I was in unconditional love and forgiveness. Like I understood. That's why my therapist did not think I was crazy, because she was like, "You had all this rage. I feel you. You're naturally coming to me, and you're forgiving them, and it's not performative. Like it's real. It's a
yeah,
real experience your heart is having. And I am having this profound, like heart opening. And I am going into law school thinking that everyone must be having this too. Like that was the psychosis. Like, like I
I
could
know.
not conceptualize. I'm like, why are people stopping me on the face? Like, why are people happy that like I'm having a hard time because they'll do better than me on the test? Like, aren't they? Don't they want to uplift me too? And not like they're like, oh, I'm trying to finish first in the law school class. Fuck you. Like, I could not conceptualize that like my experience wasn't universal. Like I
Yeah.
was like, if I just love them, they will
Yeah.
love me. I was in that space,
Yeah.
and like
Oh,
it,
it's so true.
that is
It's true.
that's the big integration piece. It's never spoken on. Like, we have to be honest and realistic, like of where the world is,
Yeah.
the events that have happened this past year or two, like are letting people like kind of like exposing people like this is not all love and light.
I know.
And the more you fraction separate from that, that's not being awakened or above it. Like you are choosing to delude yourself a little bit because it makes you uncomfortable,
I went for coffee with someone, and I was vetting them to be one of the practitioners in Concierge. And she said, and this was before I was like, I feel like level one is where you awaken. You're like in
Yeah.
the tools, in the modalities, you're learning everything everyone said to me was Bible, all my teachers, everything. And then level two is when you're like, oh fuck, it's me it's just me that only knows me, and nobody can tell me. That's
Yeah.
scarier. But second level of awakening, which is where I'm at. But when I was still in the first part, and that was 4 years in,
Yeah.
she said to me, with the global events and stuff, she was like, she studied a lot of Dolores Cannon, or
Yeah.
no, what's the other one? She has like
Doreen Virtue?
no, she's like she has a name and then she has a name when she
Abraham
talks.
Hicks?
Abraham Hicks.
Okay.
She was huge on Abraham Hicks, and she said, no, just don't even like that's
Yeah.
negative vibration. We're in the higher vibration, and like you just stay out of it. And
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking, like, that doesn't resonate, but I didn't really know
Yeah.
why. And it was really like my brother, who didn't go down this path at all, who was just like, because I lived abroad for 3 years in
Yeah.
Colombia when I was on my deep in the plant medicine work, and
Yeah.
he's like, "What's the plan? Like, you're gonna quit your corporate job, and then what? You think everyone else is just like, navigating what you're navigating, and you're just gonna like,
Yeah.
what do you like? You think you just don't have to be a part of these like conversations?" Because I'd be like, "Oh, all you guys talk about is errands and like cleaning and like these like matrix things and the news," and he's
Yeah.
like, "But what are you just like not gonna partake
Yeah.
anymore?" And at the time, I was like, no, because I'm not like in the matrix. But now I understand it's such a weird way of thinking. What do you wrote that article, the era of the new age spiritual and wellness guru is done.
Yeah.
I see this every day now. That's this like disintegration of, if you built the brand on ego or the business
Yeah.
on like performance,
Yeah.
I feel like it's starting to just dismantle. And I even feel it with myself. Like
Yeah.
any
Me too.
area that I feel like I was like, yeah, like
Yeah.
doing it. And he keeps me so honest. He's always like, who is this for? Is it for you? Or are you in your gifts for humanity?
Yeah.
I ask myself every post, every time I'm talking to somebody, I'm so humbled. Like I just am always like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's crumbling right now?
We all saw through it. Like, I mean, it's just, I mean, we all saw through it. And last year was I had to be exposed to where I had created some things that weren't fully in integrity, and where I was still showing up in some persona-ish energy, right? And was like, oh, okay, like, 'cause I still had to be this and I was like, oh, like, no, like, okay, I can see that. It's, I remember what it was like to be pedestalized as a spiritual teacher and how unhealthy that was, right? And there were sometimes subconsciously I was doing things to encourage it, and sometimes where it was just projected, and I'm like, please, like, fucking stop this,
Yeah.
Where it's like you're not allowed to be a person anymore, you're not allowed to be a human anymore. And so we have these dichotomies of like we have certain spiritual teachers who present themselves as larger than life, which then creates a lot of internalized shame in people, or disempowers them because like I have to follow this person, or my life doesn't look like this, which is really unhealthy too, because in the background that dude's a complete fucking ass twit, whatever you want to call it. Like I just made up a word there. But like, shout out to Tina Mosara. And so like it's you have that dichotomy.
Yeah.
And then you also have these things where it's you have people who are continuously looking to something outside themselves as a source for answers, or this is what it is, rather than recognizing like you're good. Some things need to shift, but you're okay, And so there's something needed to switch of like being a guide and not a guru.
Yeah.
And I've, whether this is right or not, I don't know, but like if there's been some space away from a container with a client, and meaning like, they've been out of my container for a while and they're well versed in something that I'm not as versed in, I'll go to them as a client, and like we are coexisting on this human to human level,
Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely like spiritual dimensions of experience that I have tapped into that I will speak to this right now are very likely rare. Okay. And awarenesses that have dropped into my field that like aren't the norm, so to speak. And my God, like there's a decent amount of people who are still a better driver than me. Like there are people who still understand aspects of relationships better than me who have never had an awakening. Okay.
It's so true.
And so like, 110%. And so for me to laud over them as like this omnipotent, and it's like, no, like even if you've had an awakening, the day of believing that somehow has dispose you of just being a person, or that other people aren't a lot well versed in other substantive experience of being a person. They just are, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
they're just better fucking mechanic than me. Like, it's never gonna,
No,
like, throw me in a
it's
like a repair shop and try and get me to still act like I'm a fucking above them because I opened my third eye. So like it doesn't work.
no,
You really
it's
get an
so true.
asshole. So
It's true.
um for the sphere to continue on, it just has to be more honest, more realistic, more grounded, more integrated. Um and the power dynamics that may have worked in certain like indigenous communities where like the shaman really held a lot of power and stuff, like in our Western society that's consumerist and capitalistic and all this stuff, it's just not a clean fit. So we're trying to run on a program that does not fit in to the way the way we connect with each other relationally, and the way that we connect to each other from a level of power. So yeah, the pedestal has to go down,
Yeah.
you know? And I think it's why people are so attracted or connected now to facilitators or teachers who are just, they are a little sloppy,
Yeah.
but you can see they're on their shit. Like they're doing the work at the same time too.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I have a women's community, and I always say like we're all learning from each other. I'm just like here to like start the combo, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know, and but I definitely see the ways in which at some point I was like, I remember when I first started this, I would see, someone like started something similar, and they had like more capital, so they were
Yeah.
building it out bigger, and I started getting so upset and like
Yeah.
so, and my boyfriend was like, if you're doing this to serve humanity, what do you care? Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
great if someone else is doing it? And that's where I really started noticing like my own stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
there's something there, and I get to go through my process with it. And I just showed up differently, like not,
Yeah.
as much, just in a different energy. I don't like content that's like, you should, 5 things you should do. Like
Yeah.
I feel like from a social media perspective, I don't even know what the right way to like show up and showcase your like market yourself,
Yeah.
or when it just becomes like, it's like it's a tough line. How have you navigated the like art of sharing your work and showing up on social media, or still working on that more of in terms of people who are stepping into like guides and facilitator roles and coaches? Like, what are you hoping to see more of?
Um, we've got to create some uniform system and structure together. We can't, like, especially with the guru paradigm collapsing, so these people don't like exist on this island where they are like their own cult. Like, I think it has to, like, we need like some type of association. We need to do things. If we want people to take us seriously, we need to fucking interact with our work and create the systems and the institutions and the structures just that exist in the medical, legal, engineering, all education fields. Like we need the same fucking thing. And so it's great that, like, yes, we have had to kind of do a makeshift thing with becoming social media influencers to get the clients that we need, which is just absurd. But like, I can't hide my feelings. The fucking get good at doing skits. I didn't have to do that if I was a lawyer. I would have. So, anyhow, so we've got to create the systems. We've got to come together. We've got to create the systems and the structures and the institutions. We have to build something uniform. We have to have some type of like thing that where if people are going through something, they can report it with a practitioner. And if that happens on multiple times, there's consequences, right? Rather than it's just a witch hunt through like Reddit forums. Because I watched that with someone I had in where there was like, I just know how deeply in integrity this person was. And I also watched them get caught up in like a witch hunt thing that they didn't deserve to be in. Like, if you were to actually like step back and see the quality of this person's work, there wasn't foul play. So like, I see this thing of like, there's nothing to hold practitioners accountable for harm or misuse unless it's a mob, and the mob can get things wrong, right?
Mhm.
There's no real regulatory standards or like agreed upon like rules of how people should interact, like even from a sales level, and the
Yeah.
things that are encouraged. So like we've got to create some fucking structure if we're gonna if we can complain about like people not taking this seriously, but then we've got to take ourselves serious and like start implementing these things. And so that's what I hope to see from the sphere. I think we're closer. I've been obviously forming like relationships and connections with people with who have a lot of influence and stuff, and they seem very open to these things as well. But yeah, I mean, I am going to be fully transparent. I have come close. Probably, I've been in this career, what, 7, 8 years from now. I feel that I'm well respected in the field, and my work is taken seriously. But I've probably almost walked out 4 times because I don't like the nature of like being associated sometimes with like the associations that go on. You don't look at the page healing from healing, and um yeah, it's like we've got to create something that has some oversight, that holds accountability, that there's some standards, that there's some applications. The mental health field is way overregulated, but we were way underregulated, and so like
Yeah.
there's got to be a middle ground that we all find our way to here, and we have real positions of leadership. So that's what I'm holding, because like the one last thing is I'm going to speak something that sounds weird, but like I've been in this for 7, 8 years. I feel the energetic nature that there is it's not bullshit, of like that there is like the more that you come into coherency within yourself and integrity with yourself, and the more knowledge and skill level is rising, like something opens up energetically, and you're exposed, if done correctly, to more people, more clients, higher price points. Like I do watch that there's some energetic structure that is like placing practitioners in spaces where they are in a position to get the clients that they can help, that the clients get a lot of benefit from, and they're financially resourced correctly for the time and energy that they've put in. But there's no physical structure that's anchored that yet. And so like, and we act like that's all wrong in quote unquote the matrix, but is it really always wrong? And especially if there's multiple sources that can hold people accountable and make sure that if there's misuse of this type of thing, that we'll figure it out. So I think that's the next layer, because we are all on an island, and that shouldn't be the case for the work we do and what we've gone through.
So true. Where can the people find you?
Instagram, I'm redoing all my other backend systems. So Instagram, I am Zack Alexander, and now Substack. This is
Mm,
zackalexander.substack.com, because I like to really post there. So that's where I'm at.
amazing. I love Substack. And if anyone is interested in learning about what their options are in this wild west world, in mental health, physical health, spiritual health, emotional health, all the things, you can always find me at Your Conscious Concierge on Instagram, or www.yourconsciousconcierge.com for whatever my opinion's worth. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.